I had a friend who had a mission to create the most annoying MySpace page possible. So he went into the HTML and changed the colors so they'd be all like weird, and it would flash and change every second. So you go onto the page and it's like flashing and all the colors are changing. He had some music playing in the background. He made something that was the most awful bit of music ever. He just went into one of those music programs and just pressed random buttons and chords so it was all dissonant and everything.
Yuck.
And that was playing in the background and there was no visible player, so you couldn't stop it.
No, that's chaotic.
Yeah.
Hey, David M. Green, welcome to Reanimates.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Normally, we would just be covering one thing and it would kind of spread out and talk about other things, but
I'm extremely difficult to work with.
Yes. David's diva-like requests and behaviours has made this even more tricky. I have decided that rather than do each individual episode of Deep Space Nine, a show that Jeffrey Combs obviously has a very rich history with, I figure this is going to be like a Deep Space Nine general discussion. If you're not familiar with DS9, we'll do like a little bit of background. If you are very familiar with DS9, I don't know. Depends how nerdy you are. You might be bored. I don't know. But yeah, there's so many episodes. So it just seemed insane to cover every single one, even if he was in it for 30 seconds.
You can always do more specific episodes in the future about specific DS9 episodes.
Nothing can
Leave
stop
that
me.
option open. Yes.
Nothing will stop me. I am nothing if not a completionist.
Yeah.
David, what is your relationship to DS9? Are you a big Star Trek guy in general?
I am a big Star Trek guy, but I was a bit slow and reluctant to get onto Deep Space Nine because I watched them in order pretty much. I watched the original series when I was about 20, about 2007, because my parents had Foxtel and the Sci-Fi Channel used to play them late at night, and I just thought, well, I'm going to watch an original Star Trek episode, see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah.
And the one that happened to be on was like the last one ever. So that was it. And then I looked that up and what came next? Nothing. That was it. That was okay.
Oh.
So then I went back and I watched all of them from the start. And I thought, that's great. Went on to the Next Generation, watched Voyager. But the idea of Deep Space Nine, which is Star Trek set in one location on a space station, and I thought, well, they're just going to be there. They don't go anywhere. They're not exploring the strange new worlds. Yeah. That's the thing that I liked. So it took a long time. I didn't watch it until 2013. First couple of seasons were really kind of had to push through that, but then it started to get good. And then towards the end, the last couple of seasons, season 6, season 7, just fantastic. Probably the best 2 seasons of any Star Trek, I think.
It looks like it's quite a departure from previous Star Treks. I am not a huge Star Trek person in general. I don't mind Star Trek. If we're talking like Trek versus Wars, I'm definitely a Trek person. Yeah, I've been very casual. Like, I've not seen very much of the original. I've probably seen equal parts DS9 and Next Gen. Both are very good in different ways. But obviously, I started watching a lot more DS9 because of this podcast.
Yeah.
And because of my fascination with Jeffrey Combs. Let's call it a fascination. Look, so if you listen to this and you don't know what Deep Space Nine is, as David said, it's the sort of the travel, well, not even the travels, the trials and tribulations, I guess, of the Deep Space Nine, which is a space station. So it doesn't go anywhere. It just hangs out in space. People come to them.
It does move a little bit.
Here and there,
technically.
yeah.
Even in the first episode, they have to like move the space station a bit closer to this wormhole. And there's a moment where like one of the characters is like, this isn't a spaceship, Yes. Remember, this is a spaceship. It's not supposed to be moving this fast.
You can move it. It's just not ideal, It's like when you have to put your house on wheels and move it to a different place.
Yeah, well, some people live in caravans.
Yes, it's a caravan in the sky, is what it is. So it was also the first Star Trek series to be created without the direct involvement of Gene Roddenberry, who was dead by then. He died in 91. I think the show premiered in 93. And if you don't know who Gene Roddenberry is, he basically created the whole Star Trek universe. He's the guy. Yeah. Which is sort of crazy to think that, because things like Star Trek, Star Wars, you sort of just can't imagine like culture without them. Like, I sort of just can't imagine like not having like a Star Trek or a Star Wars or something in culture, and to think that it was just some guy who just came up with it and it just became this like staple.
Yeah, Well, I think they probably didn't think it was going to be as big, like as in Roddenberry and George Lucas. They didn't think their shows or their movies would be as big as they became. They came up with one thing initially, and then other people got involved, and then just sort of started making up stuff as they went. After Roddenberry's death, kept going. He died, and then I think the other producers would have been like, right, let's get cracking. Let's make a new series, and then another one, and another one.
We'll just keep going.
Yeah.
He would have wanted it that way. If there's one thing I learned about Gene Roddenberry reading about him today, it's that he loved having his fingers in a lot of pies, as it were.
Oh, really?
Had a lot of extramarital affairs.
Ah.
Yeah. Deep Space Nine is also the first one to be set on a space station instead of a traveling ship, and also the first to have an African American person as its central character. DS9 is also a lot harder to jump in and out of. It has much more like linear plot and story arcs than other ones where they do, or like X-Files, where they have the Monster of the Week episodes and then they have the linear plot, which is always less interesting.
All the conspiracy episodes are like, oh, right. But you want to see the crazy monster.
They're always the best ones.
Yeah.
I want to see the monster who, I don't know, turns into a fish or whatever it is. The story arcs in DS9 are interesting if you're interested in that sort of thing. A lot of interpersonal conflicts, space politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. I think, of all of them, that's got the best sort of overall story arc for the whole 7 seasons.
Yeah, evidently DS9 on purpose has a lot more interpersonal stuff going on because apparently Roddenberry and writers of previous Star Treks didn't want to do that as much. Even though you can't avoid all interpersonal politics and conflicts, DS9 has a lot more of it.
Yeah, there's a lot more commentary on religion, on war.
Basically, our sort of Captain Kirk of DS9, our main protagonist is Captain Benjamin Sisko, played by Avery Brooks, who's amazing. Yep. I could watch him do anything. He has such gravitas and charm, and also is a little bit terrifying.
I want to know what the hell is going on. I want to know why my science officer's been transferred without my consent. I want to know why my chief of operations is lying in the infirmary while the Jem'Hadar who beat him is free to walk the station.
He's wonderful, and he also directs a lot of the episodes as well.
Yes, that's the carrying on a tradition there that started with. I don't know if it started with the original series, but definitely in the Next Generation, you'd get Jonathan Frakes, who played Riker, directed quite a lot of episodes, and LaForge directed a whole bunch of stuff as well.
Did Shat ever direct?
Shatner directed the 5th movie.
Oh,
which was probably the worst one.
Can't imagine.
Nimoy directed some movies. I don't think they ever directed any of the episodes.
I think that Nimoy seems like would be fine. Shatner seems like you wouldn't be able to keep him on a leash long enough.
Yeah. Leonard Nimoy also directed 3 Men and a Baby. Classic 80s comedy.
You know what's funny is when you have an image of someone in their mind, in your mind, and then they're quite different. Like, one of my favourite actors is Sidney Poitier, who, obviously, whenever he did so many beautiful films in, like, the 60s as well, like, just really, and he was always such a, like, beautiful, dignified actor. And then when he became a director, he would just make, like, kind of dumb comedies. Yeah, if you look at his directing list, it's actually full of just, like, kind of silly comedies, which is great. He obviously just knew what he wanted to do. He'd obviously had this storied kind of life as an actor, and he still was up until he stopped acting. But people surprise you. So who else have we got? We've got Odo, played by Renee Auberjonois.
At first I found the whole process of ingestion disgusting. But now that I've gotten used to it, I find eating and drinking to be quite comforting. It's one of the few things that we humanoids have control over.
I can't believe I said that right the first time.
Yes, I had to write that down phonetically as well.
He plays a changeling, like they're kind of like a shapeshifter. I'm always a little bit confused by the role of their species, because they're sort of worshipped as these almost deities, as like the founders. I find it a little bit confusing as to whether we're meant to be on their side or not, because often they do shitty things, but they are considered sort of, not gods, but godlike.
Yeah, well, they're worshipped by their sort of sycophants. They're the Vorta, which is a species that kind of are their like assistants, I guess.
Yes, who we will get to.
Yes, don't want to jump the gun here, but yeah, I think that they're the ones who worship them. Their main motivation is they like to have order. Everything needs to be no chaos. Get rid of all those people over there. Get rid of them. They're too predictable.
They're making a
chaotic.
mess.
Yeah.
Well, everyone is quite different with them. Like, everyone treats them quite respectfully. So we've also got Julian Bashir, played by Alexandra Siddig, who's a human.
How's the intelligence business?
Oh, I can't talk about it. All I can do is read these fascinating reports and analyses of analyses, and then keep it all to myself. Because no one else has a need to know. So I have to walk around this station feeling like you don't really care, do you? No.
He's a chief medical officer.
Superhuman,
yeah.
He was genetically engineered, which is, of course, banned in the Star Trek universe.
Which is weird. With that internal logic, why?
Oh, because of the eugenics wars, which was like World War III. So in the lore of the show, in the 90s, there was this massive like conflict where this like race of genetically engineered super people took over the world, and that's where the character of Khan, that's where he comes from.
Yeah.
And then there was the second movie, The Wrath of Khan. So at the height of his power, he when everything's about to collapse, he and some of his Supermen friends get on a ship and go out into space, drifting for hundreds of years, and then Kirk finds them, brings them out of hibernation, and then he tries to take over everything again because he's like super intelligent, super fit.
But does that mean that it's implied that all people who are genetically engineered in some way become evil?
I think they just wanted to stop anything like that from happening, so they just banned it across the board.
Because that's the thing. If you wanted to genetically engineer someone just to like have good eyesight, or to not get disease or something.
Yeah, but where do you draw the line?
Where do you draw the line? That's so true, look, I don't think I need to say this. I'm not pro eugenics. Just signposting that at the top.
I just want supervision. Is that just a small thing?
I get it. And also, like, it does make sense that humanity would be very different in this. I think it's the 2400s, I think, that Deep Space Nine is set in. 2300s?
One of them.
Yeah.
It's 100 years after the original series.
Yeah, I think it's the 25th century, so it'd be the 2400s, I think. Who else we got? Jadzia Dax, played by Terry Farrell from Becca.
This happens to Trills, Benjamin. Sometimes our friendships with other species don't survive because of the change.
It won't be that way with us. It's just a little uncomfortable right now.
I suggest that you allow yourself to feel comfortable with your discomfort. Time can do the rest.
Yeah.
I can't not see Reggie from Becca when I look at her.
Well, I saw Becca first before I saw this.
Well,
so,
of course.
yeah.
It was on pretty relentlessly on Channel 10 here, which is right, because it's a good show.
I think possibly she left to be on Becca. Like, is that why she left the...
It makes sense, yes, because she left before the...
she wasn't in the last season.
Yes. So she did have a replacement, which... So she's what... her species is a trill, which is like a humanoid that has this like sort of sentient organism sort of inside it that can travel from one trill to another. So it's like when one trill dies, their consciousness, I guess, can like go into another body. Or she has a different body in the last season, even though ostensibly it's meant to be a different person.
Same worm thing inside her, different body. Also, I think a trill is 3 notes. Is that right?
Like that?
Like that. Maybe that's a triplet.
Like a bird. Who else we got? Miles O'Brien, played by Cole Meany. Wonderful grumpy Irishman.
Are you eating? I'm not eating. I'm chewing. Chewing what? Gum. It's traditional. How'd the replicator create some? They just chewed it? No, they infused the gum with flavour. What did you infuse it with? Scotch.
I got a great Cole Meany story.
Please.
Would this be the time to tell it?
You may. I'll allow it.
So, my wife worked at a clothing store on Chapel Street. This is maybe 10 plus years ago. Some guy came. It was during the Australian Open, and someone came in, and she's telling me this story later. She said, this guy came in. He kind of he looked so familiar. He looked like an old John C. Reilly. And I said, was it Cole Meany? She says, yes.
I'd never thought of that, but that's exactly what he looks like.
Yes.
Oh, that's fun. I
don't think he bought anything. Yeah.
What kind of clothing? Was it like cool young people clothing? Chapel Street's quite a cool area.
I think it was kind of, trendy, hip, but for people who have a lot of money.
Cole Meany buying skinny jeans.
It was like a women's clothing store. So I don't know, I was looking for something for his partner.
But he's great. He's in charge of operations, fixing things and such. We've got Quark, played by Armin Shimmerman. He's a Ferengi and a dirty dog.
Did you know this Congress of Economic Meddlers actually passed legislation making monopolies illegal? What's the point of being in business if you can't corner the market? Gouge your customers.
He is all about cash. He's kind of a butthole. He's great. Look, he's very entertaining, as quote-unquote villains usually are. He runs like the bar and sort of like gaming area on the ship, but he's, classic like capitalist.
Probably one of the more trustworthy Ferengi. One of the more conscious, what's the word? He's got a conscience.
Yes, he does show that from time to time. When the going gets tough, he does buckle down sometimes and choose people over commerce. I guess they're not villains specifically, but they're just kind of like
profit is their motivation.
Yeah. You gotta have capitalists even in space. Nana Visitor, Kira Nerys, played by Nana Visitor.
Getting Cardassians to do your bidding must give you great pleasure.
I'm a little busy right now, Rosette. Why don't you find someone else to play with?
Nana Visitor is actually a really good Star Trek name, and that's just her real name. But she's a Bajoran, a military liaison, basically second in command.
So Bajora is the planet that's near Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm. We also have Worf, played by Michael Dorn.
I do not smirk, but if I did, this would be a good opportunity.
Worf is a Klingon, and he was from Next Gen. He was added because he is a very good actor and a much-loved character, but also they wanted to boost the ratings.
I think it worked.
It did. He's a great character. That kind of energy suits it well.
And there's a lot
grumpy,
of they explore the Klingon, culture and background and all that sort of stuff quite a lot. Like probably the most of any of the Star Treks. You really get to see all about the Klingons.
It definitely works. Not that all characters would necessarily work jumping between different Star Treks, but I think he does. All right, so let's talk about Jeff, the reason for the season. So across the 5 seasons of DS9 that he's in, Jeff plays 4 different characters across 32 episodes. We've got Tyron, who is our debut, Brunt, Officer Mulcahy, and of course, Weyoun, probably the most well-known character that you would have probably seen him dressed up as. Mainly because I think that of most of those characters, apart from Officer Mulcahy because he's just human, but of most of those characters, he's the ones that you can actually tell it's Jeff. Because the first 2 characters, he's under a fuck ton of makeup and prosthetics.
Yeah.
And also, technically, Weyoun is multiple characters because Weyoun is often a clone, but for the sake of brevity...
He always has the same name as well.
Exactly. So for the sake of it, technically, they're one character.
Weyouns. He plays Weyouns.
The many Weyouns. So 2 of these episodes actually see him play 2 different characters in the same episode, although they don't interact, which is annoying because that would have been funny to see him like doing that. You know when they have to do in the old movies when they have to do the fake hands shaking hello.
Yeah.
That would have been fun, but.
Oh, they would have done it with a over-the-shoulder shot and just have somebody else made up to look like the back of the head of the character.
Yeah.
So there were 2 episodes where he played 2 characters at once.
Yes. One is The Dogs of War from Season 7. He plays Weyoun and Brunt.
Yeah, I knew that one.
Season 6, Far Beyond the Stars, which is a personal favourite, he plays Weyoun and Officer Mulcahy.
Oh, right.
Yes.
But then that was quite a lot of characters play multiple versions of themselves there.
Such is the point of that episode, yes.
Yeah.
So we'll dig into those characters in a minute. He does not top the list of most Star Trek appearances as different characters, though. People often do think that because he played several, he has done the most. And he often very politely defers the honour to Vaughn Armstrong, who played 11 across various Star Trek shows. So this is including Voyager, Enterprise, a bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
But and Jeff obviously has roles in those as well. We're only talking DS9 today, though. He is also technically in the show, the series finale, as an unnamed and unprosthetic holosuite guest. But I don't count that one because they don't have a name or lines, and you could barely see them. So he's a background extra in that particular scene, I assume, just as a bit of fun. So the story goes, as Jeff often tells it, is that Jeff auditioned for the role of Riker in Next Gen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A role that eventually went to Jonathan Frakes, who did it beautifully. We can't fault him for it. And eventually Jeff lands the role of Tyrion in an episode of DS9 that Frakes is directing. And on set, he connects with Rene Auberjonois, who he knew through theatre, who is going to be directing an episode in the future. So he casts him as Brunt in the episode that he's directing. Family Business is the episode.
See, it's who you know.
It is, yeah. I mean, you got to get in good with Rene Auberjonois. And then it appears that Ira Stephen Bear, who was the showrunner and producer and writer for DS9, just one of the main head honchos, he was a big Jeff fan, wanted to use him a lot more. Weyoun was born, iconic. And the thing is, they actually changed the lore of the Vorta, who was the species that Weyoun is, around the fact that they wanted to keep using Jeff, because they had loved the one episode that Weyoun was in, but he dies at the end. So they just made it so that Vorta can be cloned. And so...
And they explain that by he just shows up, and they're like, didn't you
die? Yeah.
Oh, I'm another one.
Yeah.
Just,
No.
Okay.
No. We can clone. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
Look, it's Star Trek lore. Who cares?
They just make it up as they go along.
Look, it's all made up,
The problem is that, now when they're trying to make stuff, there's so much knowledge that you need to make sure that you're not contradicting anything, that, they got these huge, Bibles that you need to be familiar with, or they just start something that, this is another timeline now, it's all different. So that,
or it was a dream, yeah. That first character he plays is Tyron, a Cerulean.
Major Kira. How nice to see you again.
Tyron.
You left Quarks last night just when I was about to buy everyone another round. I was devastated that you didn't say goodbye. We were having such a pleasant conversation.
As I recall, you were the one doing all the talking.
Well, in that case, you have me at a disadvantage. You know all about me, and I know next to nothing about you.
So he first appears in season 3. Tyron is a creep.
Yeah.
he's a creepy guy.
So he wants to use the holosuite, which is basically like a brothel, but it's all holographic.
Yeah. Well, the holosuite, I guess, is sort of like a big VR, and he wants to make a program featuring Kira Nerys.
I don't know if that's explained, if that's illegal or not in the Star Trek universe. Technically, it's frowned upon, but I don't know if it was technically illegal.
Yeah, I don't know if they mention it. It's definitely frowned upon in the episode because it's just gross behavior, So it's
also,
okay,
you don't have a permission to use her image.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's and from that level, it's gross. But yeah, I mean, look, who knows what would happen in the future? Maybe there'll be different rules for what you can put in a holosuite if Trump stays in the White House.
We're not far off.
No.
They can already make videos of people with their face and stuff.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Some regulations would be good.
Yeah.
Now would be a really good time to lock some of that stuff in.
No, it's a free market. It's all about enterprise, mate.
God help us.
Yes. Honestly, the modern age is so much worse than any of these future-y shows look. It seems like they actually sorted stuff out.
It's quite quaint sometimes looking at some of these episodes that were made in the 90s, and they're kind of set around about now. Some of them when they sort of go back to the past, and it's the early 21st century. There is a DS9 episode, it's one of my favorites, called Past Tense, where they go back to San Francisco in September 2024.
Wow.
Just a few months ago.
Oh, how was it?
And there was these riots called the Bell Riots. And it's this famous riot which changed the whole course of human history.
Mm-hmm.
But they're in an office or a hospital or something like that, and they're accessing the web, the internet.
Uh-huh.
But the computer that they're using is the size of a whole office cubicle. It's enormous,
Yeah.
and it's didn't quite get it right.
In the past, they definitely thought computers were just going to keep getting bigger.
Yep.
Like, it's like, oh, if they have more power, then they have to be bigger. They've gotten smaller and scarier.
Yep.
So the first of Jeff's recurring roles is later that season, episode 23, Family Business. We meet Brunt.
If this were Ferenginar, I'd have you all taken to the spire of the Tower of Commerce, displayed to the crowds in the great marketplace below, and then shoved off! One by one! Small children would bet on where you would land, and your spattered remains would be sold as feed mulch for greenworms.
Who's a Ferengi, which, as we've mentioned, are kind of shitty.
Yeah, he's a bad one.
He's persnickety.
He's a real jerk.
He's a jerk
because he works for like the Ferengi
finances. Yeah, he's like the IRS, I guess.
Commission. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always threatened to shut him down, and
yeah, he's a tax man, I guess. Yeah. But you also barely know it's Jeff because again, he is under so much makeup and prosthetics, which it all looks good.
I'd watched several seasons before I realised that was Jeffrey. That was the same actor playing Wayloon and Brunt.
You really can't tell. Yeah, which I guess is probably like good and bad, because I guess if you're an actor who wants multiple roles, no one's going to be like, well, we can't use you on screen again because you've been this character. It's really obvious. But all of his characters look really distinct, even across the other Star Treks, which is a testament to a lot of the prosthetics, which are very good. I believe Brunt is a liquidator.
A liquidator, that's right. Ferengi Commerce Authority.
I think if he was a person, he'd be like, Mr. Incredible's boss in The Incredibles. That's the first thing that came into my head. Just a persnickety little money man.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is the excuse I need to watch this film again.
Oh my god, it's
I haven't seen the sequel. So.
Sequel's fine. The Incredibles is
First
a classic.
Okay.
Yeah. As mentioned, Wayun is probably Jeff's most well-known and popular character. Also, often he will say that it is his favorite. It was his favorite to play.
Oh, how delightful. The mysterious plots, the subtle innuendo, the veiled threats. It's also entertaining.
He doesn't appear for the first time until pretty much the end of season 4, where he's vaporized by a Jem'Hadar. That Wayun gives us a little insight into the character, but it's amazing the way Combs kind of evolved on it and built over the years. Like the different Wayuns you meet, they are all technically the same, I guess, but he does do little things that are different between them because he's a good actor, I guess. So here is one of the Wayuns explaining basically how the Vorta were created.
The Vorta used to be quite different from what we are today. We were forest dwellers, small, timid, ape-like creatures living in hollowed-out trees.
Eating nuts and berries.
And living in fear of the many predators that would hunt us for food. One day, a wounded changeling came stumbling through the forest, fleeing from a mob of angry solids.
Why were they chasing him?
What does it matter? Solids have always feared and mistrusted shapeshifters, you know that. Well, a family of Vorta hid the changeling from his pursuers. And in exchange for saving his life, the changeling promised the Vorta that one day we would be transformed into powerful beings, that we would become an important part of a great new empire that would stretch across the galaxy.
And the changeling kept his word.
That's right. Imagine, Odo. My people were once little more than apes. And look at us now. Look at what you've done for us.
So, evidently the Wayuns we meet across the seasons are Wayuns 4 to 8. So
they start at 4.
I believe so, yes, according to my research. So after this debut, Wayun 5 dies in a transporter accident. Air quotes. Wayun 6 killed himself via a sort of a suicide switch that the Wayuns have. Sort of like a brain implant. 7 got his neck broken by Worf. That one is oddly comedic. I will
Is there a supercut of all of these Wayun deaths?
There is, yes. I'll share it because it's it's like a little clip show. And Wayun 8 was shot by Garak, but by that point the Dominion's clone factory had been destroyed. So there actually wasn't going to be any more Wayuns after that.
Until they rebuild the factory and then explain it in a future
Yep.
episode.
Yep, until they come up with some reason why they can now. But Wayun is definitely probably the most fun character I imagine to play. Look, he's got, I think, what people like about a lot of Jeff's characters. He's like a little sassy, like quite clever, quite witty.
Bit condescending.
Yeah, he's like menacing, but in quite a charming way, in that sort of like probably sociopathic way.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end of the day, he's a nasty little bitch, and people love that about Jeff. You know.
Yeah.
I think that there's more room to play in Wayun than there are the others, especially because there's only so much you can do from beneath very heavy prosthetics.
Yeah, and I think of all the characters he plays, that Wayun, that's my favourite too.
There's a reason that it's probably the favourite, and why they kept bringing it back, because he's just, and because there isn't a lot of other. There's a lot of very like stern and aggressive characters in DS9 and in most sort of sci-fi shows. You get the strong pillars of strength, the hero guys, but Wayun is just he's kind of officious and nasty and underhanded, but also quite funny and oddly like dignified, almost aristocratic. Well, I think he thinks of himself that way. But the point is, he's a little bitch, and it's very funny. But sometimes Wayun's like funny and silly. There's an episode in season 5 where he and I think Ducat are at the Quark's bar and casino thing, and Wayun is like drinking and playing like one of the Dabo, one of the games, and he's winning and he's excited. He's having a great time.
Dabo! That is Dabo, isn't it?
I don't know why you insist on playing this ridiculous game.
I like games.
It's very silly, but again, very fun. The thing I like about DS9 is, or Star Treks in general, is that you can just make stuff up. Like in that episode, he drinks poison, basically.
Yeah, the Kanar.
Yes.
It's got like 30 times the limit of some toxin or something like that.
Yeah, it's this incredibly deadly poison that had been put in a drink for, I think, Ducat or Cisco.
And he just sculls it.
He just sculls
it.
it.
That's very poisonous.
Yeah, so he's like,
oh yeah, did I mention we're...
Did I mention we're immune to most toxins? Yes. It's like, yeah, if you haven't said it before, or if you haven't said anything that that would butt up against it, you can just be like, what if poison doesn't work on him? All right. So you can make up whatever you want. That's fiction. That's where the fiction part of sci-fi comes from.
That's why we like it.
Yeah. And as mentioned, Officer Mulcahy, he only has one appearance, and it's one of those weird episodes where they try something a little bit different. It's one of my favorites because it's amazing, and it's directed by Avery Brooks.
It did top the list. I found a list of like what are the best DS9 episodes, and yeah, that one was number 1.
Yeah, like fan favorites, or like it is really different to what they're doing, and it's weird and fun, and because it's set in a time much closer to ours, I think people can relate to it a bit more.
I like it because you just get to see all the actors who usually have all these prosthetics on. You just see them looking like themselves, like with 50s suits on, and you go, oh right, that's that guy. You recognize the voice.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you kind of sort of see the eyes and stuff. You go, oh right,
yeah,
that's them behind their mask.
And they get to have a bit more performance. So the reason that everyone is different in this episode is because Captain Sisko falls into this sort of dream state where he imagines himself in 1950s New York City and all the bigotry and strife that would go along with that place and time, especially being a black man and a black sci-fi writer in this fantasy he has. So we get all of the characters, all of the alien characters. We get all their like human 20th century counterparts. So yeah, it was kind of. I guess it would have been fun for them to be like, okay, well, what would Ducat and Quark and Wayun, what would they all look like if they were human? How would they act? And Mulcahy is sort of, he's just human. He's human Wayun in the 50s, but he's also, I assume this was Jeff's choice, I guess. He's just sort of being like a kind of like wise guy cop. I believe he's playing a sort of, he's an officer, so he's sort of a detective type.
Yeah, plain clothes cop.
You got to put him in that nice snatched little suit.
Yeah, with a hat, which was the style at the time.
It was a style. You're a man, you leave the house without a hat in the 50s, you'd be pilloried. And you should be. How many novelty T-shirts do you think there are out there that say "Keeping Up with the Kardashians" and have like a photoshopped picture of like Ducat, but with like Kim Kardashian's butt or something?
I think I have seen one with it's Kim Kardashian's face, but she's got the kind of like neck ridges. There's at least one shirt.
There has to be, because I think of that pun literally every single time I see Kardashian. It's too close. And I think that pun must just be made relentlessly.
I wonder if the people who made the show gave them that name based on... Because Robert Kardashian was a lawyer, in Los Angeles and was representing
That's
O.J.
true.
Simpson.
And that was before all of all this.
The show started in 93, so there might have been someone who was aware of him, and that's a good name for a whole race of aliens.
But it's the thing I found interesting about Gene Roddenberry, though, is that he, in terms of his input into various Star Trek things, he was actually he was anti-religion in a way. I was reading about his sort of relationship to God, I guess. Because, when you go on Wikipedia and it says religious views, and I'm like, oh, if there's a whole page for it, what am I looking at? Yeah, it turns out that he was just kind of like, he was like sort of pro-God, but anti like organized religion, basically. Which sort of tracks, I guess, because, if you were looking at how would religious control manifest itself in the future, like it could change. Obviously, people are becoming, I think, less religious in the modern age. Funnily,
I think some experts said that like one of the best alternatives for religion is actually Star Trek fandom.
It's fairly harmless, you get
together with other people and discuss.
You commune.
Yeah. The themes are all good things mostly, respecting people and being honest and fair. And in their society, there's apparently there's no money in the Federation, but there are like Ferengi who do use money.
There is sort of commerce in a way. Yeah. There's just no like cold hard cash. Like no one's tapping a card.
Yeah, that's one of the things that isn't quite fully explained, because they do, how do they got to buy some stuff. I guess they need to trade some things.
Yeah, it must be more of a barter system, because I feel like whenever I've seen commerce exchanged, it's usually just like gold bricks or something. Like it's just a thing.
Yeah. In the Ferengi, their unit of currency, it's gold pressed latinum.
Yeah, everything will be replaced by something else. But I think that it's all about finding like-minded community at the end of the day, because you're all communing with the same piece of law or literature or whatever it is. There's a certain amount of worship, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't think of any obvious harm that Star Trek fans do that, say, some other religions might, negative things associated with it.
You know what? I'm going to be bold on this podcast, David. I'm going to say that religion and things done in the name of religion has probably been worse than Star Trek for society overall. I think.
Controversial opinion there.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're right.
That was something I found interesting about. And then you do watch it, and it does appear that there really is no religion in the future. Yeah, it's mostly just... Often it's like, I guess, the sort of the species version of like national pride, because there's these sort of ongoing wars that keep happening. And so what most people align themselves with and sort of dedicate their lives to is more just like saving the people or, getting back to a home planet or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, the Bajorans have their religion and their traditions and their earrings and stuff like that. Some of the races do, but you don't really see much of the any human religions in DS9 anyway. Not that I can think of right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Look, listener, please feel free to correct or add to any of this, because David and I both obviously have not watched every single episode of DS9 in the last 24 hours or something, so there might be stuff we're missing.
You really do need to have binged the entire show very recently to have all of this stuff in your head at once. While I think of it, on the topic of religion, in the original series, Star Trek, which was made in the 60s, I think there is a line at one point where they meet some race that believes in multiple gods, and someone makes a comment like, "Oh, your species doesn't believe in all these gods," and William Shatner says, "Yes, we've learnt that we only need the one." I don't know. I feel like if Gene Roddenberry probably wanted to say 0, but then the executives are like, you can't put that on network television. You know, you have
This
to
is
say
the
they believe it.
60s.
Yeah.
People falling off their chairs at the audacity of Star Trek saying such a thing.
But they took little steps so that the later series could take much bigger steps.
So I think the thing that I like about good sci-fi is that it's often, generally the best stuff is quite progressive. It usually posits that the best way to go into the future and survive in the long term is to be, you know, not misogynistic and not racist and don't fucking kill each other and stuff like that. It sounds audacious to say. And in terms of like the interpersonal stuff, you know, like with Kira Nerys having to defend herself against, you know, alien misogynists. It's the same stories over and over again, which I guess is why people like sci-fi, because it's like, even though this is a fantastical setting, it shows that no matter what, we're always going to have these same fucking issues.
Yeah, they have the same problems as us, except, you know, they're on a space station.
They're on a space station. That person has gills. That person can shapeshift. But, you know, we still have a lot in common with them.
Yes.
So in terms of, like, the tentpole episodes that have really garnered the most attention, Jeff-wise, in DS9, obviously the first episode of any introduction of a character is going to be interesting, like the ones we mentioned. A lot of people seem to get a lot out of one called Treachery, Faith, and the Great River, which is from Season 7. This is sort of the one we mentioned earlier, where one of the Wayuns is communing a bit more with Odo. He tries some pizza. So I believe that particular Wayun exchanges information about the Dominion in exchange for asylum on Deep Space Nine.
And then he's living there for a while.
Yes. And he's sort of, in terms of the differences between that Wayun and literally the other Wayun that's in the episode that ends up, I guess, sort of usurping him. The informant Wayun is kind of quite sad, I guess. Like he's quite soft-spoken. He's not as catty necessarily as like the other Wayuns are.
Do you remember why he sort of defects? Was he just kind of fed up with the direction the Dominion were taking?
Yeah, I think he's just Jack of the war. It is interesting to see things like that because that would all happen in real life. People would get sick of a fight, or you know, they would change their mind somewhere down the line, or they would betray their species. You know,
yeah,
it's all stuff that would happen.
I'm sure it happened a lot in, you know, World War II when countries are changing. You know, the people are in control. Change a couple of times. It's like, you know, they advance one way, then they get pushed back, and you might end up fighting on the side that maybe you didn't want to be on, but you're just doing it to
get
survive.
through. Yeah, it's more realistic even in this fantastical world when things like that happen.
Yeah, in fact, it probably happens more in politics than it does in war.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of fighting, but so much of DS9 is not action necessarily. So much of it is politics in terms of like meetings about strategy and battle plans. Like in terms of full-on action scenes, there's actually not as many as you would assume.
Yeah.
Because they would be expensive and hard to shoot.
There are some great ones though, especially in those last couple of seasons.
Oh yeah. When the arc of the war kind of amps up. Yeah, there's some great scenes and they're shot really great, especially for the time. But that's what I imagine is that so much of war or, you know, infighting, it's all done around like business tables, doing deals.
Yeah, a lot of conference rooms.
Yeah.
In this show.
Yes. Well, you know, it's like, oh, this isn't a conference room. Look, the table is a hexagon. And they've got, you know, the big screens where someone comes up suddenly. You know, that's the future.
That's where we're living now, isn't it?
Like, look at fucking Rasputin Musk taking over the White House. Like, that's just happening in an office somewhere. The fall of the American Empire is just happening in the world's ugliest office.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing, isn't
it? Yeah. So do you have a personal favourite? So mine, in terms of any episode with Jeff in them. I talked about my favourite, Far Beyond the Stars. Do you have a favourite?
I tend to like ones with time travel.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down 3 or 4 here. I think maybe one of them has Jeffrey in it.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not I think my favourite one would be Season 5, Episode 6, Trials and Tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the one where they go back in time 100 years
mm-hmm.
and then they insert themselves into footage from the original Star Trek. So there's a scene there. There's a scene there, a split screen where Avery Brooks is talking to William Shatner. And this is like 1996 or 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, it looks pretty crappy now. But
Yeah.
it would have been cutting edge video editing for the time.
But charming in its own way, probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a great one, and they even get an actor who played some character in that original Tribbles episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. They get the same actor, he's like 30 years older.
That's cool.
He's in both, and he's the younger version of himself, and the older version. So that's great. I don't think Jeff's in it. Little Green Men is another one of my favorites. Season 4, episode 7. That's where some of the Ferengi characters, like Quark and his brother, they accidentally go back in time to Roswell, New Mexico, 1947, and they crash.
Obviously.
And they are the aliens that.
That's so
they
funny,
find.
because Futurama ended up doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine did it first.
They did it first.
And I guess the X-Files as well did a lot of stuff about that. And Independence Day, it's been richly mined by many sci-fi shows.
It's one of the great events on the Alien calendar.
So that's a great one. Past Tense, which I mentioned before, which is when they go back in time to San Francisco. It was actually 30 years into the future when they made this thing, when they made the episode.
So what, 2020s?
2024,
yeah.
they go. I enjoyed Far Beyond the Stars.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. The Dogs of War, that was the one where Jeffrey Combs is playing the two characters. I didn't realise that's actually the second to last episode ever. That's right at the end of the last season. I in my mind, I thought it was kind of earlier than that.
Mm.
But yeah, sort of generally, I think of like season 6 and season 7 as almost like one long episode. That they're all great. And a lot of the stories kind of just flow from one right into the next one.
Yeah, they really have like a real ongoing arc that just keeps going through. There's not a lot of one-off episodes in those later seasons, which again is good, especially in this day and age, I guess, when they're not doing as much Monster of the Week TV shows because they want you to binge, which is fine. I'm just not a binger per se.
And if you look at Jeffrey Combs' like credits for DS9, he's in like one episode in season 3, then he's in like one episode in season 4, like a couple in 5, and then like season 6 he's in like almost all of them, and then 7 almost all of them. So it's like all of his appearances are like at the back end of the.
They knew what they had. They were like, let's get the most out of this guy that we can.
It's no coincidence that those are my two favorite seasons.
No,
Combs heavy seasons.
We love anything Combs heavy. So why do you like time travel stuff so much?
I don't know. It's just one of those fascinations. Like, obviously, I wish I could travel through time.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Would you go forward or back?
Well, both. If I could go unlimited times, I'd go both. I think. Yeah, I'd love to. You want to go back and relive some of the good times in your life.
Not my life.
No, you could go back and relive some of the good times in my life.
Just watching from the outside.
Yeah,
I wonder what David M. Green was doing in 1998.
Playing a lot of Heroes of Might and Magic 2, I think.
I was probably listening to a lot of Spice Girls and rewatching Titanic, I imagine.
Yep. Love Back to the Future.
Of course.
Love Terminator 2.
I guess time travel's one of those things where it's so alien because there are things in sci-fi that seem possible, like various technologies and various things that they do in terms of space travel and all that. They all, like a lot of it seems possible, maybe not in our generation, maybe not in the next generation, but down the line somewhere. Time travel is one of those things that seems genuinely impossible, and so it's fun to imagine what you would do with it because it's so otherworldly. Like it's so different to anything we'll ever know or could ever know.
And not anytime soon, anyway. It's going to be more. It's easier to travel forward through time because if you just need to travel very, very fast, and then you can take advantage of the Einstein's theory of special relativity. So the faster you go, the slower time moves for you. So if you go really, really fast, close to the speed of light for some amount of time, and you slow down, you've only aged, say, I don't know, a week, but everything else is aged like 10 years. So that's, to you, it's like you've travelled forward in time 10 years. Going backwards in time is a lot more difficult because you need to use wormholes and stuff like that.
I'm not a science. I'm not Bill Nye the Science Guy. I don't know much about this stuff. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know anything about it. So if you told me, time travel's possible, I'd probably believe you. Especially if you try to sound like an authority on the subject, I'd probably just go along with it.
It is possible. We know it's possible because of like the GPS satellites. They have really, really accurate clocks in them, and you need to have a really, really accurate clock for it to work, so that you can work out exactly where you are. And because they're moving up in space quite faster than their clocks go at a slightly different rate than the clocks that we have on Earth. So every day or couple of days they need to reset them. And if they didn't do that, then the GPS wouldn't be very accurate. It has an effect, but like only fractions of a second. So not any real noticeable different. Anything that's noticeable, unless you want to have an accurate GPS system.
Yes, but then again, what is time? Who's to say who has the right time, David?
Yeah, just you can't call that phone number anymore. 1194. It was very helpful. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. My clock says 3:49 p.m. But where did that time come from? Answer me that.
It's probably set to some atomic clock somewhere.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Again, dunno. And if you explained it to me, I would forget immediately because I only have so much room in my brain, David, for important information. And so telling me that stuff is going to push out necessary stuff like Jeffrey Combs' filmography. So
you got to prioritize.
I do. I've only got so much room in the filing cabinet that is my brain that is rapidly deteriorating over time. I've only got to make space for the really important stuff.
I find my filing cabinet is getting larger and larger, and I can't find any of the files very effectively.
Oh, okay. So there's lots of files in there, but they're not organized well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There seems to be more and more drawers. Yeah.
They just keep coming.
Every year there's another set of drawers.
Eventually you're going to end up putting the memory of your child's birth file into the cabinet that's related to 90s song lyrics. You're going to lose it forever. Although who's to argue which of those memories is more important?
As long as it's in there somewhere.
You'll track it down.
Get some semblance of it out if you think hard enough. Oh, there was one more episode as well that I wrote down. One of my favourites, The Magnificent Ferengi.
Yes.
Jeffrey Combs is in that one. He
Yes.
plays Brunt.
Yes. There is a lot of Ferengi in that episode. And do you know who else is in that episode?
Iggy Pop.
Iggy Pop!
Plays a Vorta.
He does.
Yeah.
He's good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quite good at playing a freaky little alien guy. Shocking.
So it's like a heist. It's sort of a heist. Not a heist, but it's like a rescue film. They Quark and his Ferengi buddies, they get together and they go off to rescue
Quark's mum.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a very funny prisoner exchange at the end where, for some reason, the Vorta that they've got as a prisoner is died, and they're exchanging this Vorta, walking him down a corridor, and Quark's mother's coming the other direction, but the Vorta's dead. So they put some sort of remote control stimulator thing on him to remote control make him walk down the corridor.
Weekend at Bernie's shit, yeah.
It's very funny. He walks into a wall.
There are some episodes that are just outright comedy. There are some that are just very silly. Anything with a bunch of Ferengi all together. That's the thing. I feel like the Ferengi in particular are probably the ones that have the most differences. Quark is very money hungry, but I'd say there are other Ferengi that are just normal. Nog is another Ferengi in it who's really nice. Yeah, there's a bunch of Ferengi who aren't assholes, so it's I don't think it's a species thing. I think Quark is just a jerk.
There are different degrees as to how religiously they follow their prophet philosophy.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, that is a sliver of the rich lore and drama that is Deep Space Nine. Highly recommend it. If you like anything Star Trek-y. I'm not, as I said, a huge Star Trek person, but I really love Deep Space Nine, probably more so than the other Star Trek iterations, because it has that combination of obviously taking itself seriously enough to have, story arcs and decent plots, but it still has a lot of silliness and levity to it, which inevitably helps if you're going to have a show that's 7 seasons with, 25 episodes apiece. So
yeah,
you got to be able to have fun with it occasionally.
Yeah, that's a real TV show. 7 seasons, 25 episodes a season or something like that. They don't really make that anymore. That means you don't get those funny little episodes sometimes that you get in this.
It goes in a wave where you might have a few episodes that follow the same arc, and then you take a break from that and have something that's different characters, different storyline, and then you might pop back. But yeah, in a 6-episode arc of an hour a piece or whatever, it's not really enough time to explore a huge amount of other storylines without sacrificing them. Namely, I can't imagine how fucking expensive it would be to shoot 23 episodes of a sci-fi show for 7 years.
Yeah, but I guess, it made a lot of money because it rated well, and, they have the sets set up, in Paramount, which I've been on the Paramount tour. So I've walked through those streets. They've got the New York City street set, which they shot that 1950s episode. They're just walking around on the street there. You do notice that with some of the Star Trek The Next Generation special effects when they've remastered it. I've seen some clips someone's shared. There was this alien that was kind of like this. It was clearly a person in a suit, but then they put like this kind of very bright light effect around them. And when you watch it, originally, it was a cool effect. But watching the remastered one, you can see the outline of the guy in the suit.
Of course,
in the middle. It's all that's all visible.
I think there's someone in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen much of the original Twilight Zone from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Some of those aliens or monsters are... I love Twilight Zone, but they look atrocious. Like, one of them is literally two children in one big shirt. So it's meant to be like a two-headed alien. And they've just drawn these weird mustaches on them and given them little, fake bobbles. It looks bad even for the 60s.
Yeah. But, I mean, people would have been watching it on black and white TVs that were, had curved screens, and they would have been really small. So,
Yeah.
They thought that was good enough.
Yeah, look, to be honest, even for the 60s, I reckon people were still like, that looks shit house. But some of them look a lot better than that. That's a particularly bad episode. So I was going to say if you have anything to plug, but then I was like, well, I want to talk about VHS Revue anyway. So I assume you want to plug your project, VHS
I'll
Revue.
plug that.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, you reckon? Yeah. Because, I do think that there is probably a big overlap in Star Trek fans and people who like old analog technology, I imagine.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I make a show called VHS Revue where I go through old videotapes that people have used to record stuff off TV and I review them. So it's mainly making fun of the ads. Because that's often the most interesting stuff on these recordings. It's not the program that was recorded that someone wanted to save. It's the stuff they saved by accident in the ad breaks.
Well,
which
yeah.
Often you can't see it anywhere else.
Well, no, because once upon a time, back in my day, kids, if you wanted to tape something, let's say you wanted to watch something that was going to be on at midnight and you wanted to go to bed, you would just leave the tape recording and you would go to bed and it would run all the way through and it would stop by itself at the end, which meant that you couldn't stop and start for the ads. So
you'd often get some really interesting stuff.
Oh.
Right at the end, late at night.
Yeah.
Very, very low budget ads. And
I mean, yeah, depending on how regional you lived, like local businesses and a lot of those, I guess, like sort of Time Lifestyle.
those infomercials.
Yeah, like those ads that are like, buy this pack of 100 CDs that have power ballads on it or something. Yep. Although it is spelled Revue, Revue.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a bit of a joke there. So, yeah, I do jokes about the ads.
Of course.
Sometimes I do other sketches and I've re-edited the ads to make them funnier and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's a good time.
It's looking for the funny stuff that I can make fun of.
It is just kind of nostalgic. There is something quite nice about just thinking about how different things were not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
It's quite different now, the media landscape.
Yeah, like when I think of buying CDs when I was young and or taping things off TV, it's like, okay, that was 20 to 25 years ago.
Try, finding a video store or even somewhere where you can buy a CD.
Op shops. That's
I used to buy them from Kmart. They stopped selling them 15 years ago.
I think JB Hi-Fi, you can probably buy new CDs, but obviously the section is shrinking every year. Same with tapes. Like I have a lot of affection for VHS, but they're a bit of a cult sort of item now.
Luckily for me, these tapes are just usually thrown away on the street. So often I've found them on hard rubbish on the curb.
Love that.
Put them in and, there's some interesting stuff on that.
Oh, I always used to hope I'd find VHS tapes in hard rubbish. Hard rubbish for international listeners, I assume there's some sort of local equivalent, but it's around the time of year when people just leave junk. Not like trash, but just like stuff they want to get rid of.
Often it's trash.
Sometimes it's trash.
A lot of metal. Stuff you can't put in your regular garbage.
Well, you wouldn't put it in your kitchen bin. It's not like food waste. It's, like broken furniture or appliances you don't want anymore.
Yeah.
And it's
Old
usually
rice
just...
cookers.
Yeah.
Mattresses.
Air fryers galore. Yeah, it's just usually stuff you don't want. And you can't be bothered to list on Marketplace. And so if you leave it out on your nature strip or out somewhere in the front of your house, someone will take it eventually. And then, there is a time of year when the council comes around and picks it up. Anyway, I'm sure there is some sort of local equivalent wherever you live if you're not Australian. But yeah, sometimes you can find some really good stuff. Sometimes that includes VHS tapes.
If you go around the nice suburbs
Mm-hmm.
during Hard Rubbish, sometimes that's where you find some nice stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to say as well, so I've done 60 episodes of VHS Revue, and I had a look through Jeffrey Combs' filmography, and unfortunately there is absolutely nothing that I have done an episode of. No movie or TV show in which he has appeared. But there's still more tapes to go through.
That's fine. Well, hopefully one day you'll happen upon, I don't know, maybe one of the white whales of my podcasting journey. I've got pretty much everything that I have covered and will cover, but there's a few things that I cannot find hide or hair of. It's like it doesn't exist at all. So yeah, it'll be
anything off the top of your head.
There's a show called The Mississippi that he was in one episode of, which I can't even find like footage of.
From the 80s, 90s?
I think it's late 80s. I gotta do what you do. I gotta go hunting for those VHS tapes and just hope to happen upon it someday. Go scrabbling in the op shops.
It's got to be out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So where can people find VHS Revue then?
Well, if you just Google it, VHS Revue, REVUE, you'll probably find something. But yeah, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Twitter, although I'm thinking I might stop posting stuff there because it's not a fun place anymore.
No, it's pretty bad. Yeah.
And a Blue Sky. Probably Blue Sky. That's the future, I reckon.
Oh, yeah. That's where we're all going to end up.
But the full episodes are on YouTube.
Of course.
Shorter clips are on the other social media
Nice.
places.
Do you want to plug your own socials? Or do you want to?
No, that doesn't matter. I'm on social media as well. My name's David M. Green. Hello.
I definitely said that. I have forgotten to introduce people before, but I'm pretty sure I introduced you at the start. But who's to say we might have gotten distracted by my cat, who has been oddly social, and it's been very nice.
Oh, now he's asleep. Or pretending to be asleep.
No, look at his ears are moving.
awake.
He's listening.
Seymour.
Seymour, the house is on fire.